Hey Juventini, welcome back to the All UV Cast channel, and it's Match Day Live, and this is a big, massive Derby d'Italia with major implications for Juventus. And joining me on this one, I've got Eric and Raf. How's it going, fellas?
It's good, man. How you doing?
Doing good, man.
All good, all good.
Nervous, very, very nervous, I would say. Huge implications, obviously, with this one. We know we need help in the other matches, mainly with Napoli and their match against Fiorentina. I believe Napoli's final match will be Verona. So yeah, we're gonna need some help, but it won't matter if we ourselves can't get the job done. And yeah, I've been asking people on Twitter there how they feel. Put a little poll question out there yesterday. I said, how confident are we in Juventus getting this win? Yes, 50-50, no, or no chance whatsoever. 29% kind of took it at 50-50. And the second place was no chance. So it's not not super confident out there, but again, we know the inconsistency we've had to deal with this season and whatnot. But I want to talk to you fellas about how you're feeling going into this one. Let's kick it off with Eric here.
You got some honest followers, I can tell you that much. Because 29%, that's kind of where I'm at. I think this leaves very little to the imagination that there's going to be kind of more of a even-keeled match. I think it's going to be wide open, either really good for us or really bad. And I just think, given the string of inconsistencies, it would be very Juventus-esque if we go into this match and we shit the bed just because we haven't had. There's absolutely nothing that would tell me that we can put two back-to-back matches together. Even though I thought last match we played horribly, we just had a lot more luck on our side during that match. So I'm probably in favor of the no, just because I'm trying to be honest with myself.
Yeah. Raf, your feelings?
I'm not too different on that either. I mean, we haven't been great for a number of weeks now. Inter Milan last week pretty much rested their entire team to make sure today they can put us to bed. So there's really nothing other than our own pride to kind of play for today. And there's not been much pride in this team for a while. So even with only pride to play for we have right now, then, what hope do we have?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's obviously uncharted territory for us, having our fate rest in some help from rivals, and you'd think that even Fiorentina, expecting them to really do anything or get any favors. I mean, maybe if anything, they're gonna miss out on some bonus money in the Chiesa deal if we don't get that Champions League spot. So I don't know, there's that to hope for, but it's a pretty rough feeling. It's a pretty rough feeling, I'll be honest. We got some comments coming in here too from some viewers. If Pirlo sets them up in a 4-4-2, they will struggle with Inter's counter. Marco, straight up, gonna throw up today. Yeah. The nerves are high in this one. I want to ask you guys a question, and everybody joining live. Would you feel a little bit more confident should Buffon be the starter? Because it looks like Tech's going to be in goal. Your thoughts on that? Let's kick it off with Raf. Should
Uh,
Buffon be starting?
Whether he should or shouldn't, I don't know. I haven't seen much of Chesney in recent weeks to have as much faith in him as I usually have. But also, like the last game Buffon had against Inter Milan, he wasn't great. He let in that really silly goal against Lautaro, but he has something to play for at least. It's his last final games. He's gonna want to leave a good mark on his way out. He's gonna try his hardest to kind of fight for us. Where Chesney kind of feels like he's being kind of dumped out for Donnarumma. So I feel like in terms of mentality, I feel like Buffon has a bit more on his shoulders right now, and also that leadership at the back, because apparently Demiral might be starting from what I've heard. So
Yeah.
we're gonna need a bit more a bit more of a vocal presence at the back, especially with that Chiellini or Bonucci starting. So if Buffon were to start, I'd be happy. But we'll see.
Yeah. Eric, your thoughts on Buffon?
I think I've been shouting for him to start since like September, so it would only make sense for them to finally do it, especially kind of with what Raf said. This is a little bit more of a last hoorah for him. He's going to want to kind of go out on his shield, so give him an opportunity, especially against this squad, to make an impression, to be the leader that we know that he can be. I understand the argument about mentally how it's going to affect Tech and kind of the impression that it gives him. But I think you need to put that aside and not worry about players' feelings and start worrying about Champions League spot. And I think he gives us the best chance to do that.
Yeah, it's actually this is not something that's crept up either. Like Eric makes the point of, is that it's been something discussed for almost the entirety of the season, of Buffon helping organize the guys better, the leadership, the mentality. Tech's been on a off year, in my opinion. He just hasn't looked himself. Like it's not that he's been bad or unable to necessarily fill the shoes since he's come over, because he has done a good job. It's just this season is a down year for him. It has been a down year for him. Buffon has been the better option and just looked more in control, more commanding from the back, and it's made a difference on the players in front of him, as it would naturally when your goalkeeper's in control like that. So, yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't feel better if he were in goal. In terms of Demirol, being the potential starter, your guys' thoughts on there? How would you line up? I mean, we've seen the projected lineup. The projected one, I said immediately when I saw it, this is 100% not the lineup. It just, I can't believe we would go to Bentancur and Rabiot again. De Ligt should be in there. Danilo has to be in there. Cuadrado has to be in there, in my opinion. But the tough thing is, when Danilo and Cuadrado play the same side, you move Chiesa over to the left, which, there's always some trade-off, it feels like, with our lineup in this setup, which is probably the most frustrating part about seeing the 4-4-2, is that you've got these trade-offs. So I want to get your guys' thoughts. Let's kick it off with Demirol starting. And Eric, kick us off on if you would go with him and the De Ligt center-back pairing in this one.
I need
that did
Demirol
very well, I believe, in the Coppa Italia matches, right? So
yeah, I need Demirol to raise his value because I'd like to sell him. So yeah, throw him into this match, let him show his value so that we can get an extra 20, 30 mil, because I'm not a huge fan of him. Personal opinion. He's aggressive. I think he's kind of what we need in this particular match, because he's going to be aggressive. He's going to be kind of all over the place. He'll have something to play for. So he also provides the most health, I think, in terms of besides De Ligt. You can rely on someone who can actually run for 60, 70, 80, 90 minutes, whatever you need. Sure, throw him in there. I think it kind of defeats the purpose of having a leader in net if you put someone who's a little bit more reckless in front of him. Just personal opinion. And then in terms of the lineup, shout out UVFC for keeping me blocked. So I have no idea what our lineup is. That's just kind of have to get that through the grapevine there. I don't like the 4-4-2, and I think if you put Danilo and Quad on the same side and you put Chiesa in the other, I think that actually shapes up as a legitimate 4-4-2. So there probably won't be a whole lot of moving parts because your left back, if I'm assuming is Sandro, you're going to push him forward, and then what are you going to do with Chiesa? It's kind of an odd shape if you put Chiesa and Quad on the wings and then Danilo and Sandro back there. So I don't know. I think we'll lose will lose the battle in the midfield if Bentancur and Rabiot are the guys in a legitimate 4-4-2.
Yeah. Raf, your thoughts? Demiral starting and that projected.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's no secret that I'm a big Demiral fan. Going off this season, I feel like the best defensive display I've seen from this team were in the two legs in the Coppa Italia with Demiral and De Ligt playing, where aside from that first goal, we pretty much shut out Lukaku and Lautaro. Well, Lukaku in the second game, but the first game, we kept them at bay for majority of the game. The second leg, we shut up shop from the start. Didn't let them have a sniff. Lukaku didn't do anything. Lautaro didn't do anything. And then going off recent weeks, seeing Bonucci and Chiellini play, I mean, everyone says, Demiral's reckless, he's clumsy, but we've been seeing the exact same thing from Chiellini and Bonucci in recent weeks that haven't been working in our favor. They've cost us pretty important decisions and points in recent weeks. So for me, I feel like I'd like to see Demiral stay. So any amount of game time to see him partner with De Ligt would be amazing. They'd get to go together. And if the decision this summer is to get rid of him, then give him game time. Let his value get raised, because he's not going to have much value if people are looking at us to sign our bench centre back, So whatever way it is, we either plan for the future of our defence or we raise the value for us wanting to get rid of him. So for that, personally, I'd like to see him start with De Ligt. The midfield, I don't care who plays. I'm not a big fan of anyone in our midfield, to be honest. I don't think there's any pairing that I say this is the one that will be able to take on Inter Milan. In terms of Chiesa and Cuadrado, I don't know. I'd like to see both of them kind of play because I feel like although Chiesa might not be the favorite out on the left, I feel like I'd rather have him than someone like Alexandro or Bernardeschi or Frabotta take on the left wing. Like, fair enough, we might prefer Chiesa on the right, but we need to put into perspective. If we have Chiesa and Cuadrado, it's a lot better than Chiesa and Bernardeschi or Cuadrado and Frabotta, We need to kind of weigh up, especially in that the first game that we played against Inter this season when we played Frabotta. If we have any sort of show out on the left like that, Hakimi is going to rip us to shreds. And I think the only player that we have that will be able to properly keep up with Hakimi would be Chiesa. He's as quick, he's as determined. So I feel like it would be smart of Pirlo to play Chiesa on the left and Cuadrado on the right, just to give us that, that energy on the flanks. Anything else? Probably play Dybala against Inter Milan as well. I'm not a huge Morata fan. The rest of the lineup's kind of self-explanatory. De Ligt, Danilo and Buffon in goal. If he plays, obviously Ronaldo up top, of course. So that would be.
Yeah, the flip side on the Demiral thing is with this being such a crucial match and him not playing for a while. Like we haven't actually seen him for a while. Does that change the confidence level in getting him out there? Well, I know it's a tough one because Raf brings up some good points about even the vets that have cost us at times and made some costly errors and whatnot. The last match against Inter in Serie A, obviously we know that we knocked them out in Coppa, and we can almost blame these guys also. They kind of almost led to this downfall for us, even because the 4-4-2 was born against them, for God's sakes. After that rough go in the Serie A match, played them in Coppa, Pirlo busted out the 4-4-2. And it made sense at the time to line up against them just to set up shop on the flanks to kind of slow them down, make them play through the middle, have a bit more control, and it looked like we were just going to try to counter them. After that, Pirlo went with it for several more matches, and we started to see, like, if you guys remember, this was back in January. We had a great stretch in January. We were playing good ball, getting results. We only dropped that match to Mirta there. And then after that, got into this 4-4-2, and you started to see the offensive momentum drop off. And then all of a sudden, like, this 4-4-2 became this, like, almost this safety net as far as conceding opportunities even, and then goals and whatnot. But our offense struggled to find any kind of rhythm. We just lost slowly and gradually lost the rhythm and the momentum we had built in January. And I was saying at that time, I even said on here, I hope he isn't sticking with this. Because out of all the systems he's tried, even though none of them were really like flat out, this is the one, this previous systems were still better than the 4-4-2 overall. I thought the 4-4-2 was great in terms of matching up with particular opponents. And it got the job done against the guys we needed to. But long term, even at that point, I was just like, man, we started generating less and the play started to get even more clunky. And it was almost like we were in this flux. Do we want to be like this counter-attacking team? Because even the 4-4-2 limits you in terms of counter-attacking ability. So it was really a weird thing. But did you guys see it the same way? Were you kind of on board? Like at the time, I thought the 4-4-2 worked great, but I was saying, man, this can't be the go-to. Was there ever a time you guys, thought, hey, Pirlo might be switching it up, like he's doing a good job, and then all of a sudden, he sticks with this thing, and I'm just thinking, I don't know how he landed on this one out of all the ones he had. The absolute best for me was the shape we had against Lazio, hands down. And the most frustrating part about Pirlo is that he never went back to that one. So your guys' thoughts on that 4-4-2 and just, was it something that looked like he was going to do against Inter and then all of a sudden we landed on this, and can you make any sense? Like, I don't understand. Were his previous ones not better than that 4-4-2? Like it's just, it's weird, even though they weren't perfect. But Raph, what do you think?
I don't know, because again, it just kind of puts into like perspective the entirety of the season. I mean, this is a manager that hasn't really had any time to establish something that he prefers. He's had no preseason. He's had no managerial experience before this. So whatever like lineup that he comes out, it's kind of like this is his learning stage as well, which is kind of a big part of the problem. The 3-5-2, I really did prefer it a lot more than the 4-4-2, especially with our weak midfield. Why would you want to play, two midfielders there and kind of like a makeshift midfield on out wide? I've never really understood that. So yeah, personally, I've always preferred the 3-5-2 that we played. But again, it's just kind of it's just the whole issue with the season. We have a manager that doesn't have much experience. He's trying things out, and it's costing us. But the 4-4-2, there was that great stretch that we had with it, and in all honesty, I just kind of feel like it's not as bad as we might say it is. I think now it's just kind of a lot more a mentality issue with the players than the system is a complete garbage. Because I feel like apparently there was something that was said that was like, if we beat Napoli in that game, then we'll be unstoppable. And I think since that Napoli game, that kind of put us down for the Champions League game after that. The Champions League game, we got humiliated, and from there it was just a downward spiral, So yeah, personally 3-5-2, but I don't think the 4-4-2 is the biggest of our problems. I think, my opinion, it's always been a mentality issue.
Yeah, there was a major drop off when that Scudetto race kind of faded after the Benevento loss, and then that draw to Torino in the Derby. That's kind of when you saw the just, I don't know, lack of giving a fuck, basically, is what it looked like on the pitch. Even if the guys do, it just wasn't coming out that way through body language and whatnot on the pitch. But Eric, your thoughts formation wise and setup wise?
I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record here because I don't like the 4-4-2. We are in a private chat, so you guys kind of know, my particular stance on it. It's very predictable. It's all your passing lines are straight. It's a safe formation for a first-time manager, but what I'm confused is he switched his formation from this 3-4-1-2, 3-5-2 to a 4-4-2, and in my mind to prevent conceding goals. And then we end up letting goals in anyway. And then you stuck with a more conservative formation. So for me, it's like, if you were doing that to, sacrifice a little bit of your offense to give you more of a defensive aid, and that's not working, why not at least go back to something that would give you a little bit more of an attack? So 4-4-2 for me, no. And I felt that, and I know that you've said this on a few other pods, just about how we were playing well in January, playing well. But I think it just took that long for teams to kind of figure out what we were doing. And then once we got exposed, we haven't been able to recover from that. Teams now understand, okay, we just need to do this, and it breaks the entire system. They stretch us in the midfield. They play through the middle when Rabiot and Bentancur separate. And then as they go play through the middle, you saw it last match, how De Ligt and Bonucci will just separate also. So, I mean, there's no collapsing down at the middle. So it's weird. They play outside to play inside, but preferably I like the 4-2-3-1. I think we have the players for it. That's just been my shout for quite some time. I don't know if we have the two defensive center mids to do it, unless you put Danilo at one of them. But then who do you put where Danilo would be, at left back? It's tough because Pirlo never had a preseason, but I also personally believe that even with the preseason, Pirlo would still be making these mistakes because he needs a full year. He didn't need 8 to 10 games to kind of tinker and go, okay, well, this is what we're going to do, because he's doing this 10 months later. He's still tinkering 10 months later. And Antonio said this in the chat, that if you ask Pirlo what his best lineup is with his best players, I don't think he'd have any clue. He hasn't figured that out yet. So here we are stuck in this 4-4-2, 3-5-2 transition. I mean, I'm just kind of at a loss at the whole thing, because it's just, I don't understand how a person of his caliber can't comprehend and truly understand the tactics of it and make adjustments to it. But it just seems like he felt, it's like, I want to protect my team. I don't want to concede goals, and this is the best formation to do it. And we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, it's a weird one. And here's the frustrating part is, though, even if you look at this, so yeah, we had a good stretch in January. We were playing good. And I can't say that, after that, like leading up to that, I gave him leeway because, again, he was learning literally from game one and trying to figure these things out and whatnot. And there were still odd breakdowns, like mental breakdowns with this team in matches that cost us points early on that shouldn't have been happening. That some of them I still don't even put to coaching. Some of them I still don't put it on to coaching, because ultimately these guys that were making these errors were not the young guys on the team at that particular moment in the first half of the season. These were guys that had been around Juve for quite some time. And they had these mental lapses, these breakdowns that cost us goals, that cost us points in matches that, like, these big matches, the rivalry matches, Inter, AC Milan, Napoli, Lazio. It's the lower sides. It's those matches where it determines where you fall in the standings. And we were just dropping them with awful goals being conceded. And honestly, like throughout this season, I have felt, aside from maybe a couple, the leadership, the guys that the leadership should be coming from, I felt like it just hasn't been there. I think that's a big part. And, I've been talking as of late just about the culture of the team in general and how it's had a massive shift. Identity. Your identity comes from the culture. And our culture has faded drastically. And, you've got fans up in arms everywhere trying to figure out, like, how did we get to this point, And for me, it dates really far back how we get to this point, because like Raph said, and Eric, I agree with you on everything you're saying in terms of formations and Pirlo and not knowing the best 11 and everything like that. And honestly, a lot of it, like when I'm looking at these players as well, and I just think we've gotten ourselves into a situation where there's been a massive shift in this culture. And before, it used to be like, every man's in for the cause. You could pull guys off benches, but everybody would give it their all for the victory. Everybody would do their part. Everybody would fall in line. Somewhere along the lines, that feeling, that family, close-knit vibe you got from this club has kind of faded drastically almost, and you got guys like Mandzukic, who was treated awfully in his exit. This dates back, like I'm talking, this culture shift changed drastically. When the old school fans are talking about Juve sides that they've seen, it's not like we were packed with studs, like star players ever, but we had guys that were ready to go out there and die on the pitch if they had to for the stripes. It used to be about the shirt, not the names on the back. And it's tough that we've gotten into this, but you look back, Marquisio even leaving. You go into a season shorthanded at that position. There was no need to do that, but you do that. That has an impact on the locker room. You can't tell me it doesn't. It would. And it's just like, okay, that's fine. They're going to do that. Okay. But now you've left the players that are there shorthanded at a position where the guy would have played for free. You know what I mean? And there's implications of that in terms of mentality and what it does in the locker room and to the club. Move fast forward. Okay, that happens. It's fine. Go into another season. We have a transfer mercado. We get rid of probably 3 guys that were nowhere near the top of the list of guys to move in terms of quality, in terms of production, in terms of what they were doing on the pitch. Yes, you have to balance the books. Part of it is business. But 2 of those guys were fullbacks, and we went into the next season with no coverage of that position. And management pigeonholed us again. As a player, if you were on this club, would you not start to raise questions about the management? Then you try and push out your number 10, who's pledged his allegiance, who loves the club, fan favorite and all that. Try to force him up. Very, very strange. Very strange. Try to do that. Again, implications. Then you have Bonucci, a guy that left with the intentions of going to your rival to take you out. You take him back, and then Benatia, who outplayed, basically it was a pretty minor transition because you almost didn't even notice it because Benatia was playing so good. Bonucci comes back, you push this guy away, and again, treat him awfully. Over time, all these moves start to show your players what you're kind of truly about, and eventually they will start to lose that desire to really, you lose that connection with your board, with your management, with the club as a player. It becomes what it seems like to these guys now, a job, and one that they're maybe not too fond of.
Let's not forget, we made Bonucci captain. So the guy that left us to try and take us out, he became the leader of the dressing room, which is a big problem, because you can't then say this guy is devoted to the club, this guy knows what it means, because he was happy to go and leave to take the rest of these guys out. But now he's the player in the locker room that everyone should look up to. And that's suddenly where I started to feel like, we're gonna lose out on leadership in this dressing room. Chiellini's on his last legs. Buffon left us and then came back the season. And in that whole time, we did not replace anyone in that team with someone that a player could look up to,
Yeah, that's all. These have major implications. And when we're talking about, just lack of identity and whatnot, for me, it's going to kick off with the culture, and the culture's fade. And you look back to these old school clubs, these old school teams that we had that would go out there and give that, man, were they tight knit. And it started from the top. You hear the stories from all these ex-players about Gianni Agnelli and making the calls out throughout the week on guys checking in. Hey, how's everything going? You ready for this big match? Like just always involved, always engaged, always around. And I feel like there's a massive disconnect amongst this team. And, now in terms of where do we go from here? Because everybody's wondering, like, our future's obviously this big match today, but where does it start? The board. I think you have to reshape the board and reform the board. No questions asked. It's nice to see a guy like Luis Campos being, one of the names out there. Let's get your thoughts on Luis Campos. We'll start there and just the links of that. Eric, how do you feel about him being linked as a replacement for Paratici, who it seems like is going to go out? And for me, I think we need to start there in terms of change.
I mean, do we need to change? Yeah, I think you just gave an entire novel on why.
Yeah.
I don't know, because like the whole reason I feel that we're in this position to begin with is because instead of going after players that have some ties or some emotion or some character development to Juventus, we just went after people with big names. And I think periodically, as you do that, you get more players who are not playing for the badge. So when we talk about culture and we need to change it, well, we also need to start recruiting players that want to play for the club and stop looking at the names on the back of the jerseys and expecting them to love the stripes and love the jerseys the way that they did back in the day. So to compare those two, it doesn't make sense, because that's not how we're running this team. And that starts, to me, that's less on the players and more on the management, because they're bringing the wrong players in. They're bringing in talented players for the sake of having talent on the team, but you're not bringing people who have ties and love and admiration for Juventus. In terms of Paratici, I would replace him with a fucking stop sign at this point, because I don't care for him. I don't care for what Nedved does for the club. Nedved I don't know what he does other than confuse the management and argue with his own team. So how do you want the players to be leaders at the club when the three heads of the club cannot even have proper communication? Everybody's on different pages. Yeah. Nobody's not on the same page. And it started with Max's exit. I mean, and I don't want to go back into this conversation, but that's when it started, when you had somebody in Agnelli's ear and he's trying to convince him to go in a different direction because that's not how the modern game is played. That in itself was a big problem. And then when we talk about like captains and stuff, I find it those words are meaningless, because if you're talking about a captain because he wears an armband, that means absolutely nothing to me, because, okay, cool, you're wearing an armband. That's great, but who's the actual captain? And I would almost guarantee that they know who that person is in the locker room. So the fact that Bonucci's walking around with an armband that says captain means little to me, because you have more than enough opportunity to be a captain on the pitch, in the locker room. And that's on the player to step up and to be who they need him to be. I don't know who it is. Probably De Ligt, I would imagine it should be. But I feel that maybe he feels like it's not his position to tell players of seniority like Chiellini and Bonucci and put them in their place, because he's kind of he's only been there for 2 years. So it's that shouldn't have nothing to do with the management. That you're right, that's a culture thing, but that's also a player growing a pair of balls, stepping up and say, okay, we're done with this. And I don't know if they have anybody who's willing to do that.
I would even go a little bit ahead and say that, a little further back and say that the CR7 signing showed how lost we were at the management level. In terms of, number one, how the whole thing was constructed, and that Paratici literally undermined his mentor at the time, Marotta, and they completely circumnavigated him to the point where Marotta is like, essentially, fuck you guys. He left. So now you have a new board that has been formed off a backstabbing, basically. And then again, you're talking about culture. What's culture? Culture is values, what you want to believe in and everything. But now we've got a board based on backstabbing. So we just went over the list of players, player treatment, whatnot. Now they're doing it at that level as well. This team is just in shambles. They're looking ruthless here. Then you get into Allegri's, departure. And what a shit show, a scramble to find a coach. And then you land on Sarri. And then you literally are in an off season where one member of that board is saying, we don't have time. We have to keep Sarri. He's completely lost the locker room. It was evident. It was reported. He had lost the locker room. We don't have time. And then the other part of the board is saying, well, no, we need to get a replacement. Finally, Agnelli brings in his guy, and his guy doesn't even have a fucking ticket at the time.
Think about this too, because correct me if I'm wrong. The same guy that said we need to give Sarri time. I hate Sarri. I loathe the man. Don't like him from a personal level. Okay. The same guy that was saying we need to give him an opportunity is the same guy telling Nedved that Pirlo needs to go. Explain the difference to me, because how can you say, hey, Sarri needs to stay, we need to give him time. He wins the league. He ends up in Champions League spot. Then the following year, they hire Pirlo, and then he's the first person saying, "Nope, Pirlo's got to go." Like the hypocrisy in itself is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it's just the whole thing is in shambles. So you have this board that's come alive based on a backstabbing, right? Now you have these two guys, all three of them locking heads, whatnot. For me, get back to the culture. I understand that this is, different times. Finding character players that will do that, that will come out and bleed, and die on the pitch is tough. However, if you're not doing anything, in terms of how you operate, and you have no values that what are our values currently? Who knows? I can't fucking tell you. Money. Probably money. But honestly, when you start running your club that way, you really make it hard to ask for any type of loyalty. And if we start looking at these guys that are leaving, Chiellini, Buffon, who are going to be the guys loyal to this club after that? Especially now you start getting results and whatnot, like this, like not missing Champions League. Like it's tough if that happens, if we miss Champions League. So it's like we seem to be a team that's stuck on only speaking about the culture of the past. But our actions for several years now haven't matched it. And it's getting old and it's getting frustrating when you just hear guys like Chiellini come out and talk about it. And like, oh, hey, we're calm. Like, this is Juventus, like, we'll fight to the end or whatnot. And like Morata coming out and saying, oh, yeah, if you don't like it, turn off your TVs. Man, but then you put out shockers for 5 weeks in a row, Morata. The talk is cheap. It's got to come on the pitch, but the management needs to sort it out. So at the board, for me, no question, we need to reshape and reform there. At manager level, they need to get somebody with experience. But it has to be somebody that has harmony with the directors. And maybe we've had too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe we've had too many cooks in the kitchen up there, and it's time to just, keep it simple. And, Raf, Luis Campos, your thoughts there? The board, I think Eric and I are clearly in agreement. There needs to be change there at that level. Your thoughts on the board making the change there, and your thoughts on Luis Campos?
I'm 100% with you guys. For me, Nedved and Paratici, 100% this summer they need to go. I feel like in terms of bringing back the harmony, the thing that would make most sense to me would be keeping Agnelli at the top. bringing in Allegri, who he has very good relationship with, and Luis Campos, bringing him in as well. Because if I'm not mistaken, Luis Campos is the same director of football that built that Monaco squad that nearly that went to the semi-finals in the Champions League and won the French title. And if I'm not mistaken as well, built a majority of this Lille squad that's
Yeah.
most likely about to win the French league as well. So he knows how to build a winning squad. And on top of that, looking at the players that he's flipped for millions of pounds, if we have summers where we need to flip players for plusvalenza, because I know that's something that we love to do. I think he would be a lot better in terms of actually getting the value for money for the player. Instead of, if you look at like Keane and Spinazzola and Cancelo that summer, we got rid of Keane for a measly 27 million. If that was him, I feel like he would have easily been able to get a couple of 20, 30 million more for him, especially off the back end of that season. We need to have a director who can, for one, build us a team that can win, which he has done, and I think on 2 occasions now. And two, if we are going to sell players, we need to make sure we're selling them for big money and not chicken change because we need the money at the time. So I feel like for me, 100%, Luis Campos sourcing the players for Allegri, who has great relationships with Agnelli, for me, man. And that's just a perfect building block to rebuilding a squad.
Yeah, and that seems to be the thing with the managers that are, obviously the top links as far as rumors go is Zidane, Allegri. I think everybody's thought the same thing in terms of reshaping things, retooling, rebuilding. Allegri seems to be the one that makes the most sense. I think we can all agree, really, that Zidane doesn't really suit that build.
Mm. Yeah,
Are
because
we in agreement there?
if we look at the reason he was brought back to Real Madrid, he left that first because he was having disagreements with Perez. Then he came back to Real Madrid um with the goal of, okay, I'm gonna rebuild and reshape this team, and I want the signings, I want the players. And if we're looking at the signings that they've made and the team then to now, we're looking at pretty much the exact same team with Hazard in there and Ferland Mendy at left back. Like he's literally been forced to play with Vinicius and Asensio out wide, who are two young talents. Vinicius is kind of coming along this season, but before this year, we're pretty much duds at the moment. And in this time where he was forced to rebuild that team, he has the same midfield. He still has Ramos as their best centre back. Courtois still in goal. Benzema is still the only guy up top that really has any sort of goal scoring threat. It hasn't been a successful rebuild, and I feel like when he's had the squad there in place with Ronaldo and Benzema up top, Cruz, Casemiro, Modric there, Ramos at the back, Carvajal at right back, Keylor Navas in goal. When he had the squad, he knew how to make them win. But when it comes to actually rebuilding a squad from the ground up, he's still dependent on these guys to kind of carry the team, and that's not a bad thing. But at the state that we're at now, we do not have those guys that will be able to take initiative in the middle of the game. We're at a point now where we need a manager that can get the best out of our worst players. And for me, that's Allegri at this point in time. If in 5 years' time we have another successful stretch of Allegri and it's time for him to go, he wants to go somewhere else, fine. We can then bring in Zidane. But as of now, I feel like he can either go on a sabbatical or something, go manage the French team. And once we're ready, bring him in, because I would hate more than anything to have a similar situation where we bring back a legend and the fans will then start to cuss him because the results aren't being shown on the pitch and we genuinely do not have any sort of structure to provide that manager something to win with. I would hate for Zidane next season to be saying Zidane out, get Zidane out, he's this, he's that. I would hate that so much. I do not want to repeat with Pirlo this season. Bring in Allegri, let him rebuild. And then Zidane, 5 years' time, who knows?
Yeah, I literally said at the start of the season, and I posted the video from this YouTube channel like from 9 months ago when Pirlo got hired. I said it feels like a massive Band-Aid being put on the shit business done by the club. I felt bad for Pirlo, to be honest. I would have felt bad for anybody that had no experience that got hired for this gig here. But Man, might be getting closer. I know that a lot of the rumors leading up to yesterday were that Allegri was hanging on for that Madrid job, but Eric was happened to be having a coffee and took a snapshot of Cherubini, Allegri chatting with Grosso there. Eric, did you catch any of the conversation?
Yes, Max said, I'll be there.
Man, you know, if you can get this guy now, like, I mean, if we're going to miss out on Champions League football, but you get a top tier coach like that, you have to get a top tier coach for this club, in my opinion. You know, I want to get your guys' thoughts. Like, we know where everybody stands, really, Zidane, Allegri, or whatnot being top options. But when you guys hear rumors about some of these other guys, I want to know what runs through your head. Like, let's kick it off with like Mihalovic, you know, like what runs through your head when you start seeing these? And I know the you know, the running joke is just like in our transfer market rumors. You hear all these top names, you end up with Storaro. You know, so now it's like the running joke as far as managers goes. Yeah, Zidane, Allegri, whatever. Here comes in Spalletti. You know, and it's just like, ooh, you know, but Mihalovic, you know, Gattuso even. What do you guys think about those couple names being linked? Like, for me, it's just, and, you know, Gattuso, like, I think it'd be fine, but not for us. Not now, anyways. You know, not in what we're trying to do, where we need to go. No. Mihalovic? No. But you guys, what do you think when you start hearing names like that? Rumor?
I legitimately start to get scared because I would not be surprised. Honestly, there just seems to be some validity in some of those things, and it's weird because I think Reno, he's a guy that you need on your squad as someone who will motivate you, someone who's going to light a fire underneath you. He lacks in the tactics, but he excels in the motivation. I think if you get a guy like Max, who is just an absolute tactician, and then you couple him with a guy like Reno, and, you know, obviously that's a step back, and I don't know if he'd do that. That's a beautiful bond. That's a dangerous duo because you get the motivation from Reno. He gets to learn from Max. Max kind of sits back and he lets Reno do the rah stuff, but when I see those names and what they've done the last 2 years, you really have to just take it into consideration because I'm not going to be surprised. Here we are talking about Locatelli being our number one signing, easy deal, done. That's the first transfer. And no, Hakeem Çalhanoğlu is like the number one transfer. So it's like, I have no idea what direction that we're going. And so when they put a name like Spalletti in there, well, fuck, you better prepare for Spalletti because you have no clue if that's going to be true or not.
Oh, man. It's yeah. You're just hoping like, fuck, somebody else snapped these guys up. Like when Mourinho got hired, I was like, oh, thank Christ. You know,
I did that too. And then I realized who he's replacing. And then I said, oh shit, Maurizio's still available. We're done. Because I'm like, why wouldn't they just bring him back? You know, it's like I can see these types of things happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. But Raph, when you hear names like that, what's going on in your mind there?
Bro, it's literally the same. Like everything we've been saying this season about signings and recruitment, we're literally seeing right now. Like, as soon I was like, bro, we're about to sign a player Milan do not want to pay over a certain amount for, and they're most likely going to go and try and get a guy like DePaul. So we are signing a player who's not good enough for a team like Milan, and they're going to go sign a better replacement. Like, are we kidding? And then it comes with the names like Gattuso. Like, if he's genuinely in the running, that's two names now that are castaways from clubs that are right now better than us and shouldn't be better than us. And that's the beginning of a very sad downfall if we go and sign Çalhanoğlu, who's being cast out by Milan, and Gattuso, who is being cast out by Napoli, even though they're above us right now. That shows the difference in ambition. Napoli are above us in the league, and they're still like, our manager's not good enough. He's getting a Champions League, but we still need someone to take us that further level. And we're going to go and sign that guy? Nah, that is a big problem. And not only that, we're also seeing Napoli as well that are interested in Allegri, from what I'm hearing. And if that happens, where they snap him up, God forbid, and we sign someone like Gattuso, bro, that is just the nail in the coffin for this club, man. That will be it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what, like, he's going to have quite a few options there, a guy like Max, and he has had options ever since he left, really. And I don't know, I can't see him not taking one of those. I think with us, like, the fact that we're potentially out of the Champions League, I think it's still that maybe unfinished business and that connection with Agnelli, because they were great friends, you know. That might be the one thing that brings them back. But yeah, I mean, the Madrid things, Madrid's not in the best of times either. You know, so it doesn't have the appeal it once did, you know. So it'll be interesting to see where these guys land, where these guys fall. AJ's got a comment here that says, when we were talking in terms of Mihalovic and Gattuso, says those are still better and more experienced than Pirlo. So if it was between Pirlo and one of those names, I would make the change. Let's say, hypothetically, for shits and giggles, we can't land the guys we want. We have to get, it's between Gattuso and Pirlo next season. Who do you take, hypothetically, and why? Let's go with Raf first.
Pirlo, because there's no point chopping and changing until we can actually get the guy we're looking for. What's the point of bringing in Gattuso if then the next summer Pep comes available and we're like, yo, like, let's get Pep in instead. We're literally just recycling managers. Contracts are going to be pointless because we're going to be paying off managers who haven't completed off their contract. It just becomes a big financial issue. If we're going to be in the Europa League this season, keep Pirlo there. If an actual manager comes in where we have a plan and thing ready for them and we know that they can deliver that, if they're given the resources, that's when we should change the manager. If we're going to sign Gattuso now, who even at Napoli is like, they don't think he's good enough, what good is he going to do for us, you know? We're literally just casting away one manager who's, you know, not doing the job required for us, and we're going to sign a manager who's not doing the job required for a club that isn't as good as us, that isn't as big as us.
Yeah.
There's no point in that.
Eric.
AJ's right. So if it's between Pirlo and one of those names, I would make a change, and I would just change my fucking team because I wouldn't support that. So Team Gasparini, here I come, because that would be an absolute shit show if that's what we ended up with. So, yeah. But in all honesty, if I had to choose between Pirlo and Gattuso, I don't know, because if the Euros weren't this summer and I knew that Pirlo could get some guys back at the training grounds and spend more time with them, and maybe, you know, it's not just tweaking the players. He needs to tweak his coaching, and work on himself. I would probably be more apt in saying, okay, let's get back to what your original thesis was and how we can do that. Because if he can actually get his squad to play the way that his original thesis was designed, I feel like he would be a very, very good coach. I just don't know if because of the summer, if he has the ability to do that with his players, because they're not going to be available to him. So that's the sacrifice. That's the kicker for me, is you really take a chance on Pirlo to have basically the same amount of time with his squad that he did this past season, that you will this next season, versus a guy he's taken some losses on the chin. He's been there, done that. But you have to understand Gattuso has to learn his players. Then you have to bring in players that fit his style, whatever his style is. So it's like one way or another, they both put you back. So who are you going to bring in to kind of, at that point in time, I think it's going to be just pure relationship. does Pirlo have the relationship with the players that he needs? Did he lose the locker room? Would Gattuso kind of gain the locker room? Something fresh, something new. So I don't know. I'm just crossing my fingers that that it does not boil down to those two, or Mihalovic or Spalletti. Like,
I got some serious mixed feelings on that question from AJ. If it were between those two, if we're saying Gattuso and Pirlo, like, and I just like you're flipping back and forth because you're like, at what point do you have to create some sort of stability at some point.
Yeah.
You have to commit to something at some point. But then on the other hand, Pirlo's just been so stubborn on something that hasn't worked for so long that you're just like, man, what's going on? And it's just this toss up. And then again, the options out of those two options, like Gattuso, okay, like great motor, like Eric, I think put it perfectly, like, tactically not, the best. Is he better than Pirlo tactically? Arguably at this point, yeah, but he's better motivator for sure. But it's a really, really tough one. I think in terms of that, I don't think the gain is big enough to justify. Like I don't think the trade-off is so big, like on going with, like, even though those guys have more experience than Pirlo, we're not making a massive step up. So why do it for, like at some point, I think I kind of tend to agree a little bit more with Raf just in terms of just deal with that and then wait for the real step up. If you can't land that true, like this is the upgrade, then maybe you don't do it,
That goes back to for me. So that goes back to the whole Allegri situation when he kind of left. We had him, we got rid of him, and there was no plan after that. We just kind of thought, oh, let's get this guy who kind of plays a more modern style of football. Whereas the reality for it would have been, for me, let's hold on to Allegri, who gives us kind of that stability, because I was never like down for him to go, and then wait for someone like, for me at the time, a Pochettino to come in, or a Pep Guardiola, who was a name that was ringing. If we're going to replace a manager, we need to know that this manager will be able to either match or do a better job than a manager that would. So no, not match, do a better job. But back then, I wouldn't have minded a match. If we were winning league titles every season and making a quarterfinal, semi-final to final push in the Champions League, I wouldn't have minded that. But in terms of now, matching our manager, not the case. Back then, if we were looking at how we did it back then, the whole issue of getting rid of Allegri for the sake of it and not having a plan on who should replace him, that was where we started seeing this kind of repetitive thing now, where we're kind of just settling now for, oh, well, this manager can kind of do this job. Let's get him in for now. And when there's no plan, there's no structure. This is how it's been for 3 years now.
And that's what kind of made me angry about the whole thing is that, obviously I think we all are agreeing, like an agreement, even though they haven't came out and said it yet, that Sarri was not the first choice. We fell to him. But that's what made me upset, because how do you take a guy in Max Allegri, who was probably top 3 in the world as a manager at the time, and you replaced him with a coach who you've bested almost your entire tenure at your club? And so you bring in a guy who was the lesser of the two to run your club. That didn't make sense to me. But another thing too, just personally, is I think that we weigh this idea of Champions League as the make or break decision for a new manager. And I imagine that any new manager that comes in is going to sign a multi-year deal, which means even though they may not be in Champions League this year, they have an opportunity to do it the following year. So I don't know if I'm putting so much weight on the idea of us being in a Champions League spot to bring in a top manager, because the top managers outside of Max, Zidane, he's been there, done that. So maybe he finds going through the Europa League as a challenge, and he's interested in being challenged in that way, or rebuilding a team. And Max is, from the rumors, has already said, I don't care where they end up, I want to be their coach, which is fantastic. So I find the idea of being in a top 4 spot less, I put much less weight on that, because I think the idea of everything else, Serie A, Coppa Italia, even Europa League, putting that trophy in your cabinet is still an achievement. And then you have the opportunity the following year to make your impression and to get that spot. So I just wanted to put that out there that I don't know if I fully believe that Champions League would make or break the idea of bringing in a top coach.
Maybe players, yeah, but a coach, I feel like I agree.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. I think all of this kind of, and I've been saying for a while, like everybody that's been on like fire Pirlo now mode, and for a while now, like it's all fine and dandy. And I mean, he could have been fired or whatnot, but I think part of it is, number one, these other coaches are waiting for options, and I think the club's right in terms of let's make this next hiring the right fucking one. You know, let's stop with what we've been doing, which is scrambling ever since Allegri. Like whether we agreed or didn't agree on whether or not Allegri should have been gone in the first place, we can all agree on that it was how it was handled that led to this shit show that's taken place afterwards. He should have never been gone if your first choice, you know, or second, like if your top guys weren't already locked in. It should have never came to a point where let's see what's out there and who we can take. Like that's wrong. That's completely wrong. In terms of doing that at a managerial level, you know, making downgrades like Eric labeled. We've been doing the same thing with players. And that dates back to 2015. 2015 is when you started losing key guys and not replacing them properly. And it's just, again, when you start talking about the whole CR7 coming in, backstabbing at a board level, and then all of a sudden this new Galactico-style Mercado strategy, which is just masked by patchwork. It's just, it's crazy. And Idris, you know, he says, other than CR7 and Delict, we haven't upgraded in any position, like truly. And yeah, he's got it back to 5 years again. And that's what I'm saying. So player-wise and coach-wise, again, culture. What are your values? We have mottos that we talk about, but the board has not acted out on and given us actions that follow up on it. Eventually, if you're a player on that team, you got to start asking questions. It's no different than if it was your place of work. You're being promised something, you're being led to believe something, but your management acts in a different way. You know, doesn't support you. CR7 project. CR7 hasn't failed us. We failed him massively. Massively. You know, it's frustrating. So we need full-scale changes. Got to get the right manager. Got to reshape the board. 100%. This match, and I agree with Eric, you know, these guys are going to have a multi-year deal. I think that's another part of everything too. Juve's got to make the right decision, figure out who they want to commit to, Champions League or not. But in terms of the race, have to win today. Have to win today. There's been a lot of great moments in this Derby d'Italia for Juve. We need one today. And let's get, I want to get everybody putting their favorite moments in the chat here. Everybody's joining us live. One of your favorite goals or memories or anything from this Derby d'Italia. I want to get you guys to share one that personally sticks with you and then give us your prediction on the match today. Let's kick it off with Eric.
Is Gonzalo available? What's he doing today? We could use him. So was it 2018? 90-minute
17-18 season.
That one obviously probably sticks in my head because that won us the league versus Napoli, and it's been the most recent. Scoreline, honestly, I really have no idea because I really don't know how this is going to go. Really good or really bad. So I can almost see this going 3-1 Merda, but I can also see this going 2-0 Juventus. They didn't really put a whole lot of thought and work into this week's training, and I'm hoping that shows up on the pitch.
Yeah. Raf, one of your favorite moments in this Derby d'Italia, and then what you think's going to happen today?
I think we lost our man.
I think we lost Raf.
Okay,
All
I
right.
don't know what's happening. I think my connection's
Okay.
a bit. Yeah, I think my connection's a bit crazy right now. Not
Oh.
sure what's happening.
Can you hear us, Raf?
Damn. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Give me a second.
Okay, well, I'll share mine. So my favorite moment, like there's so many. And Idris comes in with the Marquisio dribble goal off the rebound there. That was massive. Man, for me, always like one of my absolute favorites. And I've got it right up top here. The Del Piero Selly, 06, late in that match to kill them and bury that free kick. Always stands out there. And just that celebration ADP's doing, just I remember losing my mind at that goal. The Higuain one, that was amazing. I'll always remember that one because I was literally at halftime of a tournament on the field. And then we'd come off. I grabbed my phone out of my bag real quick, put on the game. I'm watching it, and there's people around. Then I'm like, oh, man. And to watch that goal, I just absolutely lost it. Absolutely lost it on the sideline. Nobody really knew what the heck was going on or figure out why I was running up and down the sideline at halftime when I should probably be taking a breather and having a drink. But yeah, it was that one was awesome. In terms of today's match, man, I don't really know. I think Conte would love nothing more. That team would love nothing more than they've already, stabbed us this year. And now it's that twisting of the knife, They're going to go all out. They're going to go all out for it. Our team, I start thinking about, how we've been mentally throughout this season. Are we going to be up to the task? Sometimes in these types of matches, even your tactics can go out the window. And it comes down to the guys that are on the pitch just being able to beat that guy across from them. Have more fight than that guy across from them. Win those battles. That is the part that's hit and miss for me with our team. That's the part that's concerning because Conte's team will come out guns blazing. We know that. They will be amped up. Are we going to play not to lose, or are we going to play to win? Buffon even coming out and saying, this last performance, it was a Juve he liked, a working class Juve. You saw CR tracking back. You saw everybody working hard. Dybala covering for Chiesa out on the wing. That's the Juve. That's the Juve most of us are used to watching and grew up watching, where everybody fought for one another, And if we get that, I feel pretty good. If we don't, though, I'm afraid it could be kind of along the terms of what Eric's saying. It could get really, really bad. I'm going to hope that the guys, if they can't get up for this one, then I don't even think they have tickers in their chest, man. Honestly, if you need any type of motivation from a coach or anything in this type of match, in this type of scenario, you might just be there for the paycheck. Yeah. And I don't want to think that of any of our guys. So I'm going to have some faith in them. And I'm going to say they squeak this one out. They squeak this one out. Ugly. but we squeak it out. Raf, your favorite moment in the Derby d'Italia and how you think this game's going to go.
Yo, my connection is going crazy right now. I don't know what's happening, man. Am I back?
Yeah,
We
man,
can
we can
hear
hear you. Are your head? Is your
Okay,
headset
okay.
plugged
I don't
in?
know. My Wi-Fi's been going crazy right now.
Probably the spacecraft.
Give me one more second.
behind
Give me one more second. Give me one more second. Give me one more second.
Okay. I
Yeah,
want
he's,
to get everybody's
he's doing the
predictions here.
cast from Asgard, so obviously it's
Yeah, let's get all your predictions and everybody joining us live. Raf's having a scenario. I have the slump buster though that I pulled off for the last match, and it worked. So I'm gonna go with the same one today, and we're gonna be sporting the number 8. Okay, this was the slump buster for the last one. I'm gonna be rocking this one again. Raf,
Okay, I think I'm good now.
holy man! All
I
right.
know, it's crazy. Yeah, I
All
don't know.
good. Favorite moment in the Derby d'Italia. How you think today's match is going to go? Throw out a prediction if you want.
I'm gonna make it super quick just in case the Wi-Fi starts going crazy again. I didn't hear what you guys said, but for me, it has to be, was it 17-18 when Higuain scored that winner against, because that was literally, it was a back against the wall moment where at that point we had essentially lost the title if we would have lost there and Napoli would have won their next game. Which, if realistically, if we would have lost that game, Napoli would have been fired up and that would have been the Scudetto done. But just the whole circumstances of that game, it literally reminded me of like an Aguero moment in the Premier League. Not to the same extent, but it was a very similar, just like at the death moment. So that for me, easily my favorite in terms of winning that league title. Today, match predictions, I have no clue. I cannot predict anything based on how crazy these last few games have been. We've either come out and won, or we've come out and just been completely embarrassing. Even though it's a big game, we had a big game against Milan and we shut the bed. So I really have nothing. Turn off the legal download.
Yeah, Anthony saying rap. Turn off that legal download for a minute.
But yeah, I have no clue. I'm not gonna predict a single thing. I don't want to be like Ruben, who comes out with a ridiculous prediction and it completely backfires. I don't want to be a meme, so I'm not gonna say anything other than I hope the players are fired up.
Absolutely. Anthony's favorite moment was the Poborski hat trick versus Merida 02, and he played for Lazio, of course, the famous Cinque Maggio there. And Fish with G, one of my favorite moments will be in this match. Just wait. I hope so. I hope we can create that. I hope we can create another awesome moment against these guys. We need it. It all lies here today. But guys, thanks for the awesome chat. We covered a lot on this pre-match, and now it comes down to the boys getting the job done. So hopefully they can. Everybody who joined us live, thank you. Please like the video. For anybody joining us that hasn't previously, please subscribe to the channel. Season's winding down. We will have a fun recap show, and we will have a lot of stuff in the off season coming out too. Some cool videos for the channel and whatnot. So please subscribe. Thank you again, everybody, for all the support. Eric, Raf, always a pleasure. Everybody, I know everybody's anxious, but try to enjoy the game as best as possible. Let's see what happens. Wherever the dust settles on the end of the season, it'll be up to the club to make things right, and let's start to see how they want to bounce back for the next season. But yeah, big one today. Hopefully we get the win. As always, Forza Juve, fino alla fine. Ciao.